there, and welcome back to another one of our sections. This segment is going to be related to the concept of aesthetic valuing. If you recall, in corner 4 we had the aardvark. Aardvark stands for aesthetic valuing. This is basically where you're getting into the idea or the concept of creating a rubric, and that's just what you're going to have your students do. So the way this lesson gets started, you'll have your students evaluate a piece of art. If you don't have ideas or a piece of art that you could use, I've included one in the lesson plan. It's Starry Night from Van Gogh. It's just one of my favorites, something that I like to use, and it kind of goes well with it. But again, you could always use whichever piece of art you're interested in, or something out of a textbook if it's easier or more feasible. So with that in mind, to get started, if I was going to open up the lesson here and have an opening, I'd definitely be starting with movement. I'd be using some of those brain gym activities again. So to get this started, I would have my students all stand, so I might tell them in sign language, like everyone stand, and then they would stand, of course, and then from there I'd move right into my first brain gym activity, which would be cross crawls. Simple, elbow to knee, just like this. I might have them do a total of 10. The idea is to cross that midsection, of course, to activate both hemispheres of the brain. From there, I'd want to calm them down a little bit, so I'd switch into hook up B, simply 2 feet together, 2 hands together, and from there, take a deep breath in, and let it out silently. Take a deep breath in, let it out silently. You can include the funny sound here, or you could simply just keep on going through and get maybe 3 or 4 deep breaths in. The idea here is to refocus your students after you just kind of gave them a little bit of energy, or evoked that out of them, so to say, with the cross crawls. From there, the very next thing I would do is showcase the image. It's just an image of Starry Night. You'll find it in the lesson plan. It's actually in the lesson plan as you're looking at it, but I've also included a larger image of it in case you wanted to show it under a DocuCam or something like that, in the extras section of the lesson, so you'll find it as a handout there. Moving right along, at this point in time, I discussed the idea of evaluating a piece of art and looking at it. Not always does the idea of evaluating have to be, is this painting good or is this painting bad? And this whole idea here, this is based off of some work which was created by the Students Audit Project Zero with Harvard University. I took some of their work and I modified it a little bit, so I do need to give those guys credit for it. Their idea was to have students walk into a museum and evaluate a piece of art just by looking at it, and it had close to about maybe 15 questions. I took their work and I kind of tailored it to suit the needs, to suit the needs of what we're doing here in a better sense, and it made it a little more feasible to use within the confines of the classroom, of course. So with that in mind, at this point in time, I'd hand out that the art evaluation. It's a simple evaluation that consists of 9 questions. I'll start off by giving you a general idea as to how I would review it with my students in class. Simply hand it out, here you go guys, take care of business. Now of course it doesn't work out that way, right? I'd start off by explaining the first 2 questions. So I'd say, okay guys, here's the image that I want you to look at. I'd post it up somewhere in the classroom. Simply look at it for about 15-20 seconds in silence. So everyone in the class should be looking at it at this point. From there, I'd pause. I'd review the first 2 questions on the art evaluation. Question number 1, what colors do you see? It's really simple. This is asking about the concept, or if we're talking about the elements of art, the concept of hue. Like your students will understand it as, what are the names of the colors? They might list things like red, blue, green, yellow, black, orange, tons of different ideas. So it's simply a list of what colors they see. Question number 2, what do you see in the work in front of you? It's simple, just list or explain or tell exactly what you see. Is it an image of a horse? Is it an image of a night sky for Starry Night? What do they see within the image? Are there buildings? Is there a sky? Are there stars? What do the buildings have on them or that make up the buildings? After that, just a real quick review of those. I'd say, okay guys, your turn. We're gonna look at this image real quick for about another 20 seconds. After that, you're going to answer questions numbers 1 and 2. So simply, what do you see, what colors do you see, and what do you see in the artwork, in the piece of artwork in front of you. After that, I'd give them time. I'd take out my handy koosh ball after about a minute, toss it around to students in class. Hey, you tell me what you think. What colors did you see? And just list a few, of course. They'll toss the ball right back to me. I'll simply toss it to another student. They'll toss it back, toss it to another. What colors do you see? Thanks. I'll go through maybe about 6, 7 kids like that. From there, I'll switch right into question number 2. What do you see in the work of art in front of you? Toss it again. If you wanted to go a slightly quicker way, when your students raise their hands, just thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So as I get a response from a student, all I say is thank you. And instead of the ball, it makes it a little bit faster that way. After that, I'd review questions 3 and 4. What is going on in this work of art? And question number 4, to comparison to your own life, what elements of it do you see that maybe occur in your own life? They might say, well, hey, some things that I see in this image is it obviously looks like it's nighttime for comparison to my own life. Sometimes I'm outside and I see stars late at night, so that's a general idea of what your students might be writing for this. Of course, if your students are of a lower grade level, you might want to eliminate some of the questions or tailor it to better fit your needs. If your students are a higher grade level, you can always add more questions. This was created for my students in class, more or less for about a 5th grade through 8th grade level. I'd say that that's pretty adequate for these types of questions. But again, you can tailor it to better suit your needs. After that, I'd simply move on to the following questions. I'm going to read these right off of a list here. Question number 5, is this work of art true to life? How real has the artist made things look? Basically, is it like real life or does it look really fake? Number 6, what ideas and emotions do you get out of this image? Like, they might say, hey, it's a really sad image because of the darker colors. Those are things that they could mention. Question number 7, do you have a sense of how the artist might have felt when they created the image? So you're getting into the idea, you're thinking from the perspective now of the artist. Question number 8, what would you have called this work of art if you made it by yourself? Like, it's getting them to change the name of it. Again, higher order thinking skills with the creativity behind it. And question number 9, what have you discovered from looking at this work of art, maybe about yourself or about your own life or in general? From there, another idea to review. Basically, we've gone through all of them. I like to go 2 at a time, except for the last 3. I tend to go 7, 8, 9 and chunk those. But again, you can tailor that to your needs. From there, so we've gone through this, we've gone through our art evaluation with the Starry Night. What next? The next idea is to relate the idea of looking at a piece of art and assessing it and using those ideas now to create a rubric so that your students can assess their own works of art with their comics that they've created. So here's how I generally start off with creating a rubric for the whole comic idea. I start off by asking my students a question. What important concept should be found in each comic? So if I'm looking at one panel that the student has created, what important ideas should I see within that comic? Students might say things like, I should see dialogue in it, I should see color in it, I should see drawings, I should see a background, I should see characters. They might add extra things like, I should see 1-point perspective. That depends on the level of your class, of course. So there are a whole bunch of different ideas. All I would do after asking that question is maybe time it for a minute and say, okay guys, for 1 minute, you tell me what are important things that you think should be in your comics. Because this is going to help me grade your comic. I don't want you to be in the dark about this. I want you to know exactly what I'm looking for. So that's kind of the idea as to why we're creating this together. From there, I would pick maybe, depending on your grade level, if you had a lower grade level, I might only pick 1 or 2 things. If you had a higher grade level, I might pick maybe 5 or 6 things for the rubric. For the most part, I stuck with 3 for this one just because it makes it a little bit easier here. Say I really enjoyed things like dialogue, characters, and color. Then in my rubric, this might be like the first main point, the second main point, the third. So here, flip over, here I've got a rubric. Notice they're just boxes. Right across the top, I've got 1, 2, and 3. I wanted to make the rubric as easy as possible in regards to the system, just because having your students create a rubric is difficult in and of itself, so I wanted to make it as easy as possible. If you wanted to make it even easier, simply yes or no, as in yes, it's on the page and it's there, or no, it's not on the page and it's a missing element. Like yes, it was completed, no, it was not completed. This idea is thinking more so in regards to like, oh yeah, that would be a level 1, maybe that would be at a level 2, or hey, that would be the full credit, the highest, that would be a level 3. So now I would take my ideas, so maybe for example we said dialogue, and I would take the idea, take the word dialogue, put it right in that first box. From there, I'd think of, or with my students, say, okay class, what do you think a 1 would be? This would be the lowest one. And they might say something like, maybe there was like no dialogue whatsoever. Okay, got that. And then I'd come in here and write no dialogue and take it from there. Then I'd move on to number 3. And number 3 would be the highest. And the highest one would be maybe like the dialogue, was very well written. There were no grammar mistakes, no problems at all. The sentences were well structured, and it looked like a solid piece of work. Then from there, I would really explain everything there and write that down. Then I'd get the idea of a number 2. Well, it's not really a number 3. There are a few spelling mistakes. Maybe the sentences are kind of short. The dialogue, maybe the dialogue was somewhat limited within the panel. That's an idea. Then I move on to number 2. Okay, so here, did it have colors? Was it colored adequately? Here, no, the panel wasn't colored at all. Unless you could make that argument if it was done in black and white, where the student was simply using pencil to shade it, but that's a whole nother area. So basically, no, there was no color. Yes, the color was great, astonishing. The colors were very vivid. Not only did they use colors, they used complementary colors, and they focused on that idea. A 2 here, it wasn't quite a 3. It was a little bit beneath. Maybe the coloring wasn't done very adequately. It was outside of the lines, somewhat sloppy, but it was there. It could have been better. That's a number 2. And then simply move on to your next. If you had more points for your rubric, you would simply just keep on going through that process. From there, I'd move on to the very next thing, which is, hey class, we've created a wonderful rubric. Now you're going to be using it to judge or analyze your own comic. Now you're looking at basically the aesthetics of your own comic. You're going to value it now, in a sense, aesthetic valuing. You're going to judge your comic to see if it met these ideas which we spoke about as a class. So run through it themselves, maybe simply put an X here, saying that, oh yes, I was a 3 here because all of my panels had dialogue and all of the dialogue was very well written. After you have your students go through that, that's kind of in the closure part of the lesson. From there, I'd wrap it up with a quick reflection of what, so what, now what. Simply, what did you do throughout this activity or throughout this lesson? So what is the importance of all of this? Why are these things important? And now what? Now, how are you going to use it in the future? Do you think this is a significant skill to carry with you? Why? Why not? Explain. That's for the journaling process. Thank you very much. That basically covered the aesthetic valuing lesson. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section at www.usaexperience.org, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.